electric. I'm not a good DP, so don't ask me. But I also come from a social work background. I got my MSW at UCLA, so I've actually been on the ground in schools talking to kids in terms of gang intervention. I've slept outside on Skid Row in downtown LA. I come to everything from a very sort of passionate and empathetic perspective. Have been an activist and organizer for about the past decade. I am also a veteran, as I said, of the Air Force and the Air National Guard. While I was in, my job description was satellite wideband telemetry and space systems, so I bring some degree of technical expertise. I was also in charge of teaching both CPR courses and self-aid buddy care, which is combat self-aid. I'm also a Southerner. I'm the only Southerner in the group. I'm from Alabama. I grew up in Florida. I bring a slightly different perspective to some of our socio-economic issues and social justice issues in Culver City.
Yes.
Lastly, I'm a unabashed environmentalist. That's where I come from. That's my background. I've worked with the Sierra Club, Food and Water Watch, the Global Climate Convergence for about a decade. I have a lot of connections to national organizing. I've helped draft national bills that are in Congress. I've helped draft resolutions for the LA City Council. I just have a multiplicity of experience and a boatload of empathy.
Thanks. Okay, Marcus? What separates you?
What separates me, in no particular order, I'm the only combat veteran in this group. I was a battalion commander, field artillery battalion commander, responsible for the lives of 700 to 800 soldiers, daughters, sons, mothers, fathers. Me wanting to be a council member, I don't take this responsibility lightly. When you're dealing with life and death in circumstances where there's just not a whole bunch of time, you know you have to make the right decision. Fortunately, as a council member, I'm going to have a bit of time to make the decision and be part of the team. I mentioned team. In the military, teamwork is number one. Mission accomplishment is number one. To reach the mission accomplishment, you need to work with a diverse group of soldiers. Female, male, gay. I mean, it's from the South, from Hawaii, from Guam, black, white, Asian. But we have one common goal: to complete the mission. If I'm elected as a council member, I'm not going to agree with the other council member every time. I'm independent. But at the end of the day, it is required in my mind, in my DNA, that we attempt to not lose sight of the common goal, and that is the quality of life in our city. Everything has to be driven by that. As a lawyer, I'm a bankruptcy lawyer. I've been in boardrooms dealing with creditor committees where everyone's up in arms, pissed off, mad, calling people names. In the successful cases, we're able to come up with a compromise that's a win-win for everyone. People are still leaving the room pissed off, but jobs are saved, the company reorganizes, and the creditors receive some money. I've been active in this community for over a decade. I'm the only one that that's dealt with a whole bunch of traffic studies, that's dealt with a whole bunch of EIRs. So with the general plan update, I'm probably the one that you want to see up there that's dealt with the general plan update, at least one or two elements, because I've done that before. The Fiesta La Bayona, I've been on that committee for 14, 15 years. Working with people that sometimes we disagree on stuff, whether it's politically or whatever, but we come together and we reach that common goal to put on a great event. for people to have a good time. You know, it doesn't bother me when someone disagrees with me. I love it because it makes me think maybe I'm missing something, or maybe I'm not. Maybe there's a nugget that I can pull from that. That's what separates me. Thank you.
I have one more question, and that's in order to end on a high, I want to ask about cannabis. And do you think, just like your opinion, do you think that the city council has acted appropriately to this point about dealing with the cannabis issue?
It's not just because we have a bunch of council members in the room, the most yet at any forum, but I think the city council has done a good job. They've spent a lot of time on this, and there are many, many tasks to do in the coming year. I don't think we should retread any of the ground that City Council has covered, and the voters are going to get a chance to speak to the tax issue in April, alongside voting among us. So I think that the City Council has taken into consideration the stated desires of voters for access to recreational cannabis. I think that they've taken account of the interests of homeowners in their concern about a business that they haven't seen in the neighborhood before and are apprehensive about. I'm the father of 2 children who are currently in Culver City schools, so you know, as a parent, I don't fear this particularly. It's important for parents to have conversations with their kids and educate them about all the challenges in the world. So I think the important thing is to take the advice of the public health professionals, which is to destigmatize cannabis but not normalize it. So we need to be cognizant of the fact that this is likely to be more common. We need to make sure doesn't become normal on the streets of Culver City, but at the same time make sure that process doesn't involve any discriminatory policing or anything of that nature. So a long-winded way of saying good job, council members.
Daniel?
Sure, this is another place where I think our current council has actually done an incredibly fantastic job, and I want to actually give some large due of credit to city staff as well. I think, as Alex said, they heard the concerns of residents, specifically the residents in Fox Hills, who are very paranoid about dispensaries being concentrated in Fox Hills. They heard the concerns of other residents who wanted to make sure that the dispensaries weren't within a certain distance of parks and schools, so the locations where dispensaries could be located were drastically reduced. The number of dispensaries right now stands at 3. I think that's a very reasonable number. I think it took and the council took into the consideration a number of elderly patients, elderly residents, cancer patients, people who are dealing with extreme illnesses for which medicinal marijuana really is the only thing that they can do. And even though this is recreational marijuana, it would still allow them closer access to what they need to really live life. And I think overall that process in particular, and I think the process around the Culver Studios, are 2 processes that the city should model going forward for community engagement in terms of what is produced and how we're going to make sure that everyone is heard and translate what they say into action.
Thank you.
The council made a deliberate process. As far as the process, I have to commend the council for being able to deal with something so complex, such a wedge issue, in warp speed. It'd be nice if we could do that in other issues in warp speed. The process itself, it's great. We only have 3 retail locations. But where I started having trouble with that process is when we got the feedback from the residents, sometimes the map changed if that feedback was really loud and against it, and then they were not within that zone. So we have three locations that are going to impact 3 areas. I think we could have slowed up the process a little bit to receive a little bit more feedback from those residents. I think that would have been healthy, instead of pushing it through so fast. I think it went through fast, but I think the council, they reviewed all of the evidence, they felt they needed to make a decision, and they spent a lot of time was spent on it, a lot of meetings. So I'm not going to say a mistake was made, but I would have wanted a little bit more time to go by to get more input from the areas that are in fact being impacted. If you live in an area that's not impacted, or down the street or versus you living down the street where a cannabis retailer is located, you could get different responses. Some people that were against it, when they found their area wasn't on the list, if you will, then they're good. And sometimes that's a problem with us in society. If it's not affecting me directly, I'm good. But we have to look at it a little bit differently, that if it's affecting your neighbor, whether it's Fox Hills, whether it's West Washington, we still need to have some empathy and think as if it could affect us.
Well, thank you. That's our hour. Perfectly done. Well done.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Ken, and our candidates. We have a sign-in sheet being passed around, and if you would like to remain on our mailing list, please be sure and sign it. It's over here on the table. And thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you. Good to meet you too. Daniel, as always. Thanks again. Good job. Thank you. See my nose?
You know your profile's really pretty bold.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah, that was an excellent job. Excellent. You did
Are you going to go to work?
No, I'm off today.
But I don't want to take you away from the trying to cover. They might want to ask you a question. So we'll take a look.
No, I know it's a different thing.
I've now seen a lot of.
Yeah.
But you live in one system. Do you spend any time, any anxiety, any